Greetings, friends. Operational situation at the front on the 5th of March. We will start with you from the Lyman direction of Terny-Yempolovka. Fighting continues in the eastern settlements mentioned above. Attempts by Russian troops to improve the tactical situation along several gullies and pits continue. Let's talk more about this situation, because there is a lot of misinformation. She did it yesterday. She does it today. The fact that the Russian troops managed, there were reports yesterday, to enter Terny, today. There are reports that fighting is taking place on the outskirts of Terny. Well, actually, it already exposes yesterday's information from their side on the situation. It means that all attempts to advance, which were made by Russian troops in large groups, they were stopped at the approaches of both the Kruglaya Beam and the Laptev Yar. Therefore, we do not record any changes in this area. Small groups attacked in the direction of Yarrow, near, but were also stopped within the red zone. Therefore, we do not record any changes, although it should be noted that in fact, there is a lot of misinformation from that side now. In the end, I will tell you one of the reasons, very interesting, why this misinformation is now there. But for now, let's go along the front for now. There were also several attempts at Bologorovka, but they were positional in nature. In the Bakhmut direction, we will talk about the Ivanovo and between the Ivanovo-Tix in Kai positions. There are very heavy battles going on in Ivanovo itself, both in the northern and southern parts. Today, on our side, there was information from the fighters about what the Russian troops managed, and in the southern part, yesterday, was for the northern one. We noted a small advance. Today, there was information that they managed to advance along the south. There are very heavy battles going on along Shirokaya, Shosynaya streets, as well as Voronezhskaya streets in the north direction, and attempts as for the south. So, there is a small industrial zone in the south of Ivanovo. And accordingly, it is quite seriously strengthened. There are a number of very strong positions that Russian troops are now targeting. What will it give them? The opportunity to catch on, again fill basements, dugouts and so on. Fill the area with personnel, and continue the assault operations, as we have talked with you, in the direction of the Ivanovo forest. It means that there is still no confident control over the situation, on the part of the Russian troops, despite the fact that this statement was made on our part. Yes, indeed, there is progress, there are fights. This is true. But there is no information that they managed to gain a foothold, because these are just the same active battles that we had, like for example yesterday. Somewhere it is possible to push with varying success, somewhere, unfortunately, there is progress, we have noted it, but so far which is unchanged. But yes, indeed, the enemy has partial success so far. Between Ivanovsky and Kleshivka, these strikes, as we said, are distracting in nature, but at the same time, naturally, attempts are being made to advance along the forest belts in a westerly direction, across the field, across the open. We talked about it. Today, footage was published, just the same, further attempts are being made, and not just infantry, but with the support of armored vehicles to improve the tactical situation. And again, I'm not saying that this is in the direction of planting north of the Kleshayevsky fortified area. This is exactly the same attempt to circumvent it, that is, to circumvent, and create the most disadvantageous position for the higher education institution. To date on the 5th of March, it is possible to repel these attacks, but the enemy continues to press. This is a very important remark. That is, he does not leave attempts. We turn to the Avdeevka direction. According to the FARTs, assault operations by Russian troops resumed today. And it's actually a strange moment, because, well, first of all, this information is reported both by our fighters from the field and by Russian sources that there are assault actions by Aperdix. But the weather is good enough, and we saw two attempts from the Russian side, which were filmed on cameras, when the BMP was in no hurry to infantry, foot troops. So, they had no means of fire destruction. Perhaps this time they have taken into account and already have, respectively, atoms and so on. But, this is one moment. In any case, all this is still being beaten up on the distant approaches, as we have seen, from Stepovo, when it moves to the Stepovo area. Therefore, I will not say that the enemy is now doing something large-scale. In other words, this is the same sortie with the support of 1 or 2 armored vehicles, of course infantry. Everything is the same with the standard one, that is, along the same path. Therefore, more positional fighting continues, and assaults are carried out, but without changes. As for Orlovka, the situation is very difficult, extremely complicated. A number of necessary measures were taken on the part of the SSU, and of course, a number of approaches were mined, and so on, and so on. But the location itself, we said, is not the most profitable. What are the Russian troops doing now? Against the background of the strikes that are in Berdik, the assault actions, there is also some activity of Russian troops. In the area of the beam, between Berdik and Orlovka, they naturally make distracting blows with this, and transfer forces just the same to Orlovka, in order to continue the assault actions. That is, after the losses incurred, the troops will ratify, and, accordingly, further assault actions will be carried out. So far, we have not recorded any changes, but there is a small part of Orlovka itself. In a thin way, with varying success, there is still no confident control on the part of the Russian troops over a number of positions. It is possible to knock out, therefore we say that with varying success. But here a lot will depend not on the thinnest, but on what happens southwest and northwest of the thinnest. Because southwest of the Russian troops are trying to advance in the north direction, north of Vodien in the direction of the thin. These attempts were made back in that year. It was possible to repel, so a fairly strong defense. But there is an area between thin and water, where they are making these attempts to bypass the positions of the AP. Accordingly, they are pressing from the south. There is such a moment. The second is that the assault operations are continuing at the Don Garden Association on its outskirts. So, yesterday we said that the enemy was advancing in a westerly direction. At the intersection, they took control of it and moved on. Further in the direction of both the abandoned reservoir, and taking into account that the main goal. This is a dacha village. There have been a number of attacks to the south. So today we are talking about attacks on the outskirts of a dacha village. But of course, the logistics routes are far from the Russian positions, to the south of the thin one. This is just the same passing at the cascade of bets. The thin street itself is central, but if they are pressed from the north, naturally they take partial fire control. And then, if the promotion is in the Garden Association itself, then naturally the road section will already be taken under full control. Therefore, the situation here is also very difficult, but without significant changes. It is possible to discard a number like that. There are also assault actions on Pervomaysky. We have said that the situation is being clarified. Now there are active battles. Let's just say, it doesn't make sense to mark 3 or 4 houses on the map, so it's, as they say, without significant changes. Because they said that there is already some progress there. Reported. Yes, there is, but so far it does not make sense to outline such a dot on the map, because counterattacking actions are being taken from the side of the skyscrapers. We have active military operations within the gray zone, so we are waiting for further clarification. According to Novelsky, there were also a number of attacks in the direction of Novelsky from the enemy, but without any changes. Now let's move on to Krasnogorovka, the city of Krasnogorovka. So as you remember, there were reports from our side about the 3rd Assault Brigade, a few days ago, that it was possible to completely dislodge the Russian troops. And accordingly, we have not seen any more shots from the Russian side. But we have seen footage from the 3rd Assault Brigade, where they are just operating in the south of Krasnogorovka. Discarded. But today, the fact that a number of Russian ossinters have not corrected their cards, there is one moment. But today, we received other information from their side, specifically, that they managed to move further along the southern part of Krasnogorovka, take a section of road and so on and so on. Moreover, 3 streets were taken, and they approached the 4th or 5th, which is really strange. It's strange against the background of reality. Yes, because we have seen the video, we understand that the footage says the opposite. You know, even I had doubts, knowing the situation, but from the words and looking at the visual map of the Russian military commander's fishermen, it seems, yes, that well, in fact, maybe our people are not telling the truth. But then, a very interesting moment came to light. I told you that the assault actions will be active not before the elections in the Russian Federation, but before the inauguration. What we are actually seeing now, because here before the elections, although we see a decline in a number of polling stations. In a number of polling stations, we see aggressive assault actions by Russian troops, but they do not bring any results so far, in any case. So, we have already talked about the Russian media component. It is also important for them, the information war. And recently, a lot of Russian IPSO has been working on elections, Well, there are very many moments. I'm not going to voice everything anymore. It means that he wanted what the Russian media and the Russian military leadership want. As you remember, in the 23rd year Vladimir Zelensky said that we would liberate Bakhmut and 2 other cities by the end of the year. So, the Russian media component is based on saying, just mentioning Zelensky's words, but at the same time adding that we could not release anything, but instead we liberated Avdeevka and 2 other cities. There is one more point, as I was informed from the media component, that they will say that we have held Bakhmut and liberated 2 cities, meaning Avdeevka and Mariinka, the capture of these cities. But, we ideally want them to get 3 cities before the inauguration. Therefore, on the one hand, we said that this is strange against the background of victory, against the background of Novomikhailovka. On the whole, the forces that are involved. But yes, they need a 3rd city. They want to. They have now developed Bakhmut and 2 other cities. Bakhmut was held, and 2 cities were taken, but they want Avdeevka and 2 more cities. That's it. This is exactly the same media component. And now, when I was informed from the other side, by people who can be trusted, that yes, this does not look strange. Attempts to enter Krasnogorovka, launch assault operations, and implement very serious roles. Because for many, this attack, it was on the part of the Russian troops, these forces that were involved, were not invested in logic. Now it is invested, if we know this moment of the media component. Moving on. Assault operations continue along Georgievka. It cannot be said that now we are going to talk only about the northeastern part of the North Georgievsky Stavka, because the enemy is pushing in the direction of the central street of the southeastern outskirts already. Here is the situation in itself. The enemy presses. It is possible to restrain for the most part, because we were also preparing high-level fighters for the fact that such an option of offensive actions on the part of the enemy will be implemented, but it is possible to restrain for the most part. But it cannot be said that the attacks are now only north of Georgievsky. They have also become systematic to the south, because they are making daily attempts to improve the tactical situation, but in general, this is also calculated to exhaust the Russian side. Therefore, active fighting continues. In Novomikhailovka yesterday we added a clarification, promotion along the street of Academician Timoryazov and Shevchenko. To date, there is information that the assault operations continued at night, and the Russian troops continue their assault operations with the dawn today. Therefore, there are 2 main goals now. The first one is also the capture of farms. There are very heavy battles in this area. This is the first moment. The second point is the central street. There is pressure here not even from 2, probably from 3 directions already in this direction. Why? Pressing from the southeast to the northwest direction, this is the first moment, in the west direction from the east, and attempts are also being made to improve the tactical situation approximately in this area with attacks to the southeast, also in the direction of the central one. Therefore, well, simply put, now the enemy is conducting aggressive assault actions and trying to cling to something. That is, for them Novomikhailovka is also extremely important. Therefore, there is a lot of pressure on her now. Moreover, I want to mention one more point. Yesterday there was an official message from representatives of the General Staff about Novomikhailovka. Actually, no one hides that the situation is very difficult, and the number of attacks for yesterday exceeded Novomykhailovka, and in Novomykhailovka itself, exceeded the number of attacks in the Avdeevka direction for the first time. In other words, so that you understand, the pressure is very serious. It is clear that we are talking about small infantry groups. These are short attacks that can last only a few minutes. In other words, this positionality, yes, but this number is increasing, and accordingly. Now the Russian troops are distorting as much as possible, trying to attack the locality with the widest possible coverage. Well, there is some haste about this. But in any case, where the fighting is going on, we have outlined the picture, but it is possible to restrain in a number of areas. But the situation is very, very difficult. That's what I'd call her. We are moving on to work at work. The situation has become a little clearer, but not from our side, but for the Russian side. Today, they are already reporting that they carried out a successful counterattack in their work at the Avdeevka. However, we stated this with you a week ago. We took a fortified area in the south, but then the Avdeevka took 2 fortified areas in the south. Therefore, the Russian troops were dislodged from the central part, and even more so. Above the central Cherevnaya Street in the north direction, they are definitely not here. Therefore, we see that they are trying to hide some information. In other words, it is apparently very important for them to work, because they had it flashing for a week, that they were holding all positions, but allegedly repelling attacks. And only today, they are already beginning to report that the southern part is controlled, and not all, by the Avdeevka. This is due to the fact that we denounced you, that is, there are shots from the Russian side for objectivity, showed you, not only from our side, from the Russian side, that the south is completely controlled, and both fortified areas are controlled by the Avdeevka. Therefore, although they are correcting the situation, they are trying to convey the truth, but this is a week late. In any case, this is very good, because judging by the comments, a lot of bots are coming. I am hiring for this channel, yes, to write that this is outdated information for me, that they are going further there. No, I have just the same up-to-date, outdated one a week with them. This is according to the situation, in short. We do not record any changes, but there really is a vector of attacks, including the northwestern vector, but there are no changes. Again, I repeat, there are no changes. And from east to west, a number of attacks were also launched from the ledge, without any changes. This is the situation we have on the 5th of March at the front.